Should you have to worry about wood destroying organisms in an inspection, specifically in the villages? So working in the villages, it is very rare. I actually was talking to one of my fellow agents the other day, and I told her that I had just had an inspection. I'm representing the buyer, and I said we found wood destroying organisms, and at that point we were trying to get to the bottom of what kind. And she could not believe it. She's done a lot of deals in the villages. She has worked here for a very long time. She was like, what, in the villages? So yes, you can still get wood destroying organism. You know, they're not going to just stop at the gate of the villages. There are things that you need to understand, first of all, in your contract, and also, you know, just in general, what you should look for with inspections. So I want to just give you a little tidbit, little example. I was doing this inspection. My sweet buyer wanted to make sure that she was completely taken care of. This is actually an investment property, and we wanted to make sure that we checked all the ins and outs. I gave her my best recommendations for inspectors, and our inspector did, you know, a very thorough job. However, we made sure that we got a wood destroying organism inspection as well. So that is something that you can tie in. You don't have to just stick to your regular inspector. Now you can, and they are probably still going to find signs of a wood destroying organism. So what does that mean? It could be termites, it could be ants. Well, in this case, it was not termites, it was ants, but the first WDO, wood destroying organism inspector that was on site, did not know what they didn't know which of the two. So then that opened up a whole question. Do we need to open up the wall? Do we need to see how much damage is done? You know, especially if we can't figure it out of which one it is. And they gave us an option. We could do a treatment for the whole house, or a treatment for the whole house plus the attic. So in this house, unfortunately, even though we all love those vaulted ceilings, the vaulted ceilings in this case were a hindrance because the inspector and both inspectors were not able to get into this part of the house, because it's like this, you know, your vaulted ceilings, and the damage was done at this section of the house, and getting into the attic, the inspectors were not able to get over to see how far, you know, if these critters, whatever they were up in the attic. So there were a lot of considerations. We called in, thankfully, another professional who deals with pests and critters and wood destroying organisms. And she was very, very knowledgeable, someone who's done this for over 20 years. And in her inspection, she could tell right away that it was carpenter ants and not termites, which still, she was able to check the severity of it. Now let's just say for a moment, worst case scenario, that it really was a huge project, right? So what would that look like? And in a as is contract, the seller doesn't have to do any repairs. And the buyer, though, in your inspection period can walk away. Now in a standard contract, a little bit different. The buyer is locked in that inspection period, but anything that you find, you can ask for. So you have 3 categories to play with, and this is really, really important to understand. So you have your general repairs, your WDO, so your wood destroying organisms, and then your permits. So in your inspection period, say it's 15 days, which is typical, but might be different depending on your contract, you're going to have an allowance. So let's just say that your home that you're purchasing is, you know, $270,000. That's going to give you right around, say, $4,000. If you were at 270, you'd be right around $4,000 allowance for each category, not just one. Now in an as-is contract, there's no, you know, allowance per se. It's just, you know, you can still ask for those repairs, but the seller may not do it and you may not stay. So that's how that works. Now in a standard contract, as a buyer, you cannot pull out and get your escrow deposit back. However, you are protected with that 1.5% unless you negotiate differently. And funny thing was, in this deal, we did negotiate a little bit differently. So we got our price point changed a little bit. And then we said, okay, we'll take off half of our allowance for our inspection repairs. So any general repairs that were found, we'll half it. We'll just take 0.75 instead of 1.5, right? So there's lots of little ways you can play around with your contracts and your offers. And what we did was we did that, but we didn't touch our WDO, thankfully. And so the buyer had a full allowance of 1.5% of the purchase price. Thankfully, we didn't even need even hardly a fraction of that because the damage was so minor. And by the way, how they found it, it looked like sawdust. And the WDO inspectors called it frass. I've never heard of frass before. I was talking with my colleague. She's never heard of frass before either. That was what they called it. They called it frass, and it looks like little shavings, and it basically was the ants coming in. It's a stick-built home, so you have a wood frame home, and over time, especially on an older home, if you don't have some sort of bug protection, you're probably gonna need to consider that because if the wood gets soft, especially in say like the north facing, and in this home it was the north facing section, you're gonna have more moisture there. If you ever look at a home and you see like algae or moss or whatever, a lot of times it's in the north facing area. So I just heard someone, I'm in an open house. This is an unedited video. There you go. This is my downtime. I had a few minutes in the open house, so I wanted to share this with you. So anyway, that is the thing. So these ants were just picking off kind of the extra little moisture from the wood. So now it is remedied. This house wasn't lived in for over a year, just unfortunate circumstances. Now they're going to be, they're going to remedy it and treat it. So that's something to keep in mind as a homeowner. If you have a stick frame or even a concrete, talk to your pest control. You are in Florida. There are lots of pests. There are lots of bugs. And by the way, bugs are not the only thing. You should be, I don't want to scare you, but there are things that end up in the attics that the inspectors have told us about too. So anyway, just food for thought, something to keep in mind as you're putting in, as you're buying or selling. Think of these things. As a seller, make sure that you have all those WDOs taken care of. And as a buyer, make sure that you look. Thankfully, this inspector, again, was really thorough. He was going to catch that frass. But some inspectors may not. It was real little. I didn't even see it when we did a couple walkthroughs of the home. It was more at that point, looks like a whole bunch of sawdust just kind of all over. So the ants were just bringing it into the home. Which was good. So that's how we found it. So I hope that helps as you're doing your home buying searches or as you're getting ready to sell. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions, or maybe you have a story of some crazy critters or wood destroying organisms that interfered with your sale when you were buying or selling. Have an amazing day. I'll put my contact info in the chat. And by the way, if you are local, I would love to share these contacts with you. I'm not going to be on here promoting another business, but I would gladly share this WDO inspector, the second one who came out and was phenomenal. So much knowledge, took all the guesswork out of it, and we were able to continue, with peace of mind, not wondering if this was a bad purchase or if there's going to be a whole bunch of damage or what the story was. So have an amazing day, and I know we'll talk soon. Bye.